you had to characterize the White's tree frog for people that are keeping it in the United States and Canada, we primarily focus on a lot of arboreal setups with logs and things for them to climb on. But in your experience, are you saying you find them more like kind of like chest level to the floor?
Yeah,
That they're more hunters on the floor than they are. I mean, I'm sure they probably do hunt up in the trees, but like where you're experiencing it, though, you're seeing them grabbing stuff off the ground.
definitely. Yeah, they're usually pointed down at the floor, just waiting to ambush whatever huntsman spider or centipede or whatever comes along. Um, they're generally just, on log piles or, a pile of sticks or, yeah, just fallen branches. And they might be on the fallen branch just a foot off the floor. Generally, that's where I see the white tree frogs. Saying that, I hear them called from the downpipes along the gutters of roofs. So they've obviously climbed up onto the roof, but generally when they're out foraging and hunting, I see them low down. This year, sorry, the end of last year in October, the start of the wet season, was the first time I'd actually caught the white tree frogs in full breeding bloom. Like it was the first raid. So I was up in an area called Gladstone, and I was staying with a friend just inland from Gladstone, about 30 minutes inland. And there was a lot of like state forests and, old cattle land. And so the white tree frogs love flooded temporary grassy pools to breed in. And I was just blown away by some of these areas. They hadn't filled up with water yet, or they might have had the smallest puddles. So it was essentially just wet grass. And they were everywhere. You know what I mean? Just some of the biggest ones I've ever seen, all calling, and they would allow me to get right up, and I was getting images and footage of them actually like in mid call. And I must have counted about 50 just in like an area the size of like um maybe 4 to 5 living rooms, and you could see that this area was going to soon fill it with water, and it was where they've been coming to breed for years. And wow, it was just mind blowing to see them just getting prepared and ready, because I seem to catch them when a lot of the actions already happened. You know what I mean? But this time, for the first time, I caught them before the pools had filled up, and they were just stimulated off the first rains of the year. But yeah, it was really interesting that, because they're just to see them that active and just so engaged with each other, and the males grabbing other males and mistaking each other left and right, just trying to amplex other males, and it was really really interesting to watch. I was there for that long photographing them. I was so enthralled in the moment that I actually thought it broke my camera. My camera stopped working because it was getting rained on, and I went, "Oh no, you've pushed the camera too far." And as far as I knew, there was still battery on it. So I just thought, "Oh my God, you've broken your camera." But luckily, it was only the battery. So it was worth hanging around for that extra in the rain to get those images.
That's that's really awesome to hear. It makes a lot of sense for me because when I have a misting system hooked up to their tank, and every time it goes off, they go nuts, and it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense then. Um, so for your camera, um, so is it not weather sealed?
It's kind of considered splash proof. It can handle some water. So you don't want to be photographing in the torrential rain. But this was like it started off just like spitting, and then it picked up a little bit, but I just couldn't stop photographing them. Every time I took a step, there was a new frog in a new position, with its throat blown up, and then there'd be a pair in amplexus, then there'd be a female in the background, away from that little ditch, more hanging around at the base of the trees, just listening out, just who's got the fastest and more prolonged call. Because that's interesting, and it like the females kind of will base their genetic fitness on the speed and the length of the call of the male that they're going to ideally share genetic material with. So you can see the females hanging out in the background just observing, listening. Yeah,
That's
really
a really
really.
cool point. Um, a lot of people don't think about this, but I think you could probably shed some light on this too. Um, with female frogs being the ones that are coming after the males, especially if you have multiple ponds or pools right beside each other, they're going to decide who sounds the best out of them all, not just one particular pool, if there's enough options to choose from. So what you were seeing is probably one of the White's tree frogs off in the distance, like listening to see if she was going to go that direction to the pond. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
really interesting if we think about that. Like a lot of people don't consider it. I mean, in some cases, if there's not very many places to breed, I'm sure they're going to go to the same spot. But where you're talking, if there's a lot of options, or if there's a big enough area, they might approach it from a different way.
100%. And look, she's going to also take into account the temperature of that pool. If it's getting plenty of sunlight, it's going to speed up the development of the tadpoles. And she'll probably notice the frogs are calling even faster from those warmer pools. So, that from what I could see, it was like, that seemed to be like where most of the white tree frogs are hanging around. I did see them around in other parts of the forest, but that was clearly one of their favored depressions that was going to fill up temporarily, and obviously just not have the competition of having fish and things in there. So yeah, it was interesting to catch them just before the field flooded. It's amazing for me as keeping them all my life to see them
Yeah.
um at the start of the breeding season was just wild.
Did you go back after it filled up and see what it looked like and the frogs and the eggs?
I didn't know. I kept going north. So I traveled another, oh God, about another 800 kilometers. I stopped off at a few other places further north. So I didn't get to see the pool afterwards. But I did end up back in that area, and it wasn't that state forest I went to. I went and had a look at some sort of flooded cattle property next to a friend's house. When I was there at the start of the wet season, the vegetation was very low. There was a lot of rocket frogs, Litoria nasuta, really pointy nose, a bit like a rana. And they were calling in big numbers, and the desert tree frog or the red tree frog calling in big numbers. There was heaps of cane toads around. Um, but the white tree frogs clearly didn't favor this flooded cattle field because I didn't see any calling or hear them or anything. And yet only a 10-minute drive away in this state forest was just, I mean, there was scores of them, just like you'd see 75 in just one area. Easy. Yeah, it would have been interesting to go back actually and see it once it had flooded. But that was pretty cool. And then when I did get back to that area, I went and had a look at that cattle property, and a lot of the vegetation had really grown over the swamps, you know what I mean? So the frogs had tried to get in there really quickly breed before the vegetation smothers it and dries it up. So it's a race against all these different factors, and it's just got to be ahead of the curve to have that success.
Definitely. Um, that's a lot of awesome stuff here. I'm just thinking about it. I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, like pitcher plants. I'd be interested in hearing about like the native sundew and their relationship with the frogs as well. Um, I mean, we could talk about that stuff a little bit if you're interested too, if you wanted to share. I mean, have you seen or photographed any of the carnivorous plants in Australia?
I've photographed them in Borneo, and I've photographed the sundews in Australia. So I've seen like the little mosquitoes and gnats caught up on the sundews, which they're doing a great job of keeping the numbers of those pesky little insects down. But the carnivorous plants we've seen in Borneo are fantastic. I've not looked at those images for a long time, but the pitcher plants are awesome. I mean, they'll yeah, even the white tree frogs become victims, don't they? They'll slip in and not be able to get out and be absorbed by the plant. I mean, it's just insane that a plant has that ability.
Oh, are you seeing that happening in Australia?
I've never seen it, but friends of mine have.
Wow, the white tree
They've seen
frogs
like,
can't get out.
yeah, there's like a real
Wow.
waxy coating, and the white hasn't been able to get out, and it's just dissolved. I think my friend's seen like a partially dissolved frog in one of them, and it was
Wow.
just like, oh, poor bugger. He's ended up going in and then not being able to get out and become the most nutrient-rich meal that plant's probably ever going to have in its life.
So, what's really interesting about a lot of the American species of pitcher plants and hyalid tree frogs is they have a relationship where the hyalids can hide inside of them and live, and they're immune to the enzyme inside of the plant. So I was really,
Wow.
it's really surprising to hear that, like, the ecosystem in Australia is not the same. So pitcher plants and frogs aren't friends where you live, but where I live, like, there's a
Yeah,
potential you could see a gray tree frog inside a pitcher plant sleeping, and like
that's amazing.
they eat the insects that are drawn to the plant. They poop in the plant, and the pitcher plant gets the frog poop, and they get fertilized. So they've come to like, um, what's it called? They have an
Symbiotic relationship.
symbiotic relationship. Yeah,
That's amazing. Just think of that. The frog's done most of the work digesting the food. It's given the plant a lovely nitrogen-rich pellet. There you
yeah,
go. That'll be easier to dissolve. Everyone's a winner. How good is nature? It
yeah.
really has sorted everything out, hasn't it? I love it.
I'm happy I didn't think about getting them then, because I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to get carnivorous plants from Australia. The frogs might like it, and it's like, oh, well, maybe not, because I don't know that they have a relationship. It's good that you say
You know
that.
what? Yeah. If you wouldn't want to see one of my favorite pets, 10-year-old female tree frog, just inside dissolving inside the pitcher plant. I'll have to speak to my friend about that again now. I'm going back 10 years when he was telling me this stuff. I've never seen it, but I was blown away because I've grown up. I've always
Yeah.
had an interest in Venus flytraps and, all carnivorous plants. Very, very interesting group of plants. But yeah, when I thought about it, I was like, what? Vertebrates being taken by them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, over here, they eat salamanders. So, in the same bogs that the great tree frogs, or even so there's hylids, and we also have chorus frogs, real small, like thumbnail size tree frogs. They're like more like bush frogs, but they'll go inside of them and sleep, and like I said, just hang out, and they can get out perfectly fine. But there are
Yeah.
salamanders. One of them is a spotted salamander. It looks kind of like the fire salamander. It's about I'll just go off of I think it's imperial, 9 inches. So
Is it called a blue spotted salamander by any chance?
so there is another species called that. It's a
I had them
smaller
as pets.
salamander. You had it as a
Yeah.
pet. That's
North,
pretty cool.
North American blue spotted salamanders when I was a young fella, yeah. Had
Yeah,
them as
they're
pets.
they're more northern than where I'm at, but
Yeah.
there's a much larger species, and it's a. Let me see if I can pull it up for you to show you, because it
Where are
probably.
you based, Aaron? Where about in the States are you based?
So I am in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of on the edge of where it's temperate, and like, uh, we definitely are more salamander based, but
Mm.
I'm definitely more so like a frog guy myself. Um, so we have a good bit of diversity. It's not anything like what you have at all, but I don't know. I find it still really interesting how these animals are able to survive in some of these different environments. Let me show you real quick. So this is a spotted salamander right here.
Oh, of course I've seen them. Yeah, yeah. They really do remind me of the fire salamander.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that would be a good reference for you.
No,
Like,
no. So my story is I come to Australia as a qualified zoologist, expecting to get the visa, like I guess the equivalent of a green card here, um, with the having the degree and work experience. Because it was on the skilled occupation list, there was a shortage of zoologists. So I was like, brilliant, this will get me in. I've always wanted to live there. I've got the right stuff I need. When I arrived here, it came off the list. They no longer needed zoologists. So I was like, oh,
you go
what am I
all
going to
that
do
way.
now? Got all this way. So, I went backpacking, traveled, got to see all this amazing stuff. But then I got sponsored in a completely different industry. It's I kind of recruit fundraisers, people to go and raise the money for non-profits. We have worked with some wildlife ones. Sea shepherds was one of our clients that we were working with, and then there's like anything from humanitarian aid to medical research, things like that. So my job is to find the people that can go out and inspire people to donate long term to these brilliant causes. And I got offered a sponsorship, which means the company backs you, but you've got to work a certain amount of time with the company before they'll put you forward for the permanent resident visa. So that's still in the workings for me. So I've got 2 years to go before I can lodge the permanent residence. Once I've got that, I'm free as a bird. But I've got to continue down this path to get what I need. But I've kind of, I guess the herpetofauna stuff, that's just become an amazing full-time hobby again. Do you know what I mean? It's become like a after work weekend kind of hobby, and it's so I've been just keeping up with the knowledge and getting out there and doing my thing. I just haven't been in paid work in that industry for a while due to visa circumstances, basically, is the bottom line. It's just takes a little while to sort of get that residency and citizenship here.
Yeah.
But the way I see it, it's worth it to spend the rest of my life here to do what I love doing. So it is what it is, and I'll just keep going until I've got that piece of paper that says I'm an Australian resident, and then I've got more options.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the goal.